The members of Silver Creek Range barely noticed Layla Carter at first, just another black teenager in the corner with a pawnshop rifle. They assigned her the broken lane, whispering dismissive comments. Chase Ellison, their golden champion, smirked openly at her presence. "This place isn't for everyone," they seemed to say without words. None bothered to watch as she practiced on rusty cans in a junkyard, or knew about her military marksman father. When they sabotaged her equipment and banned her from competing, they thought they'd erased her. But they miscalculated. Because when Layla returned with Mr. Ramirez's championship rifle and a determination forged in rejection, it wasn't just about hitting targets anymore. It was about shattering the barriers they never thought she could break, one perfect shot at a time. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. And if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow's special episode is one you definitely don't want to miss. The afternoon sun glinted off the polished glass entrance of Silver Creek Range as Layla Carter trudged past it, her backpack slung over one shoulder and her diner apron tucked under her arm. She slowed her pace, dark eyes lingering on the sprawling white building with its immaculate lawn and American flag fluttering proudly in the breeze. Through the windows, she caught glimpses of people moving about inside, men in pressed shirts, and women with expensive-looking equipment cases. Her gaze drifted to the bronze plaque by the entrance that read, "Excellence in Marksmanship since 1952. Layla sighed and checked her watch. She was going to be late for her shift at Molly's Diner if she didn't hurry. Still, she couldn't help pausing for one more moment, watching as a sleek black SUV pulled into the parking lot. A young man about her age stepped out, carrying a custom rifle case that probably cost more than all her possessions combined. One day, she whispered to herself, before reluctantly turning away and picking up her pace toward the diner. Behind her family's small rental house that evening, Layla had arranged a makeshift shooting range. She'd positioned several empty soda cans on a fallen log about 50 feet away. The backyard wasn't much: patchy grass, an old swing set her mother kept promising to get rid of, and a chain-link fence that separated their property from an overgrown vacant lot. But it was private enough for her to practice. Instead of a rifle, Layla held a straight branch she'd found and sanded down. She raised it to her shoulder, closed one eye, and aligned her sight with the middle can. She controlled her breathing, just like she'd seen in those YouTube videos. In through the nose, hold, then slowly out through the mouth. "Bang," she whispered, mimicking the recoil with her shoulders. She repeated this process again and again as the sun began to set. Sometimes, she'd toss small stones at the cans to see how accurate her aim was becoming. She hit 3 out of 5, not bad, but not competition-worthy either. "Layla," her mother's voice called from the back door. "Phone's for you. It's Molly asking if you can cover a morning shift tomorrow." Layla lowered her stick rifle and called back, "Coming." Before heading inside, she took one last look at her makeshift range and promised herself she'd get a real rifle someday soon. That someday came sooner than expected. Layla was on her way home from school the following Tuesday when she passed Pete's pawn shop. She didn't usually go inside. Most of what Pete sold was overpriced electronics and dusty musical instruments, but something caught her eye in the window, a rifle old but still gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Before she knew it, she was inside, the bell above the door announcing her entrance. "Can I help you, miss?" asked Pete, a heavy-set man with thinning gray hair and perpetually suspicious eyes. "That rifle in the window," Layla said, trying to sound casual. "How much is it?" Pete raised an eyebrow. "You shoot?" "Yes," Layla said, firmly, though she'd never actually fired a real gun. "I do." Pete studied her for a moment before shrugging. "It's an older Winchester Model 70. Good condition, though, $350. Layla's heart sank. She had saved $208 from her diner job, tucked away in an envelope marked college, hidden in her sock drawer. Even with her next paycheck, she'd be short. "Mind if I look at it?" she asked. Pete retrieved the rifle from the display and handed it to her carefully. "Know how to hold it?" Layla nodded, positioning it exactly as she'd practiced with her stick. The weight was different, heavier, more substantial, but it felt right in her hands. She raised it to her shoulder, feeling the smooth wood of the stock against her cheek. "It's seen better days," Pete commented, pointing to a few scratches on the stock and some wear around the trigger guard. "Previous owner didn't take great care of it. That's why the price is lower than market." Layla didn't reply. She was having an internal debate that felt like it would determine the course of her life. College money versus her dream. Security versus passion. "I'll take it," she said finally, the words escaping before she could stop them. "But I can only give you 200 now. Can I pay the rest over the next 2 weeks?" Pete seemed surprised. "You serious about shooting then?" "Dead serious," Layla replied, meeting his gaze steadily. After a moment's consideration, Pete nodded. 200 now, rest in 2 payments, and I'll throw in a basic cleaning kit." He paused, then added, "You know a place to practice? Can't just go shooting anywhere." "Silver Creek Range," Layla said confidently, though she had no idea if they'd even let her through the door. Pete let out a low whistle. "Fancy place. Bunch of old-timers and rich kids showing off. Good luck with that." As Layla counted out her hard-earned money, she tried to ignore the twinge of guilt. This wasn't how the money was supposed to be spent. But some chances only came once, and something deep inside told her this was her moment to grab. 2 days later, Layla stood outside Silver Creek Range, taking in the full scale of the place for the first time. The main building was flanked by outdoor ranges that stretched far into the distance. A large sign listed various competitions and events, all bearing the same name: Chase Ellison, Club Champion. Inside, the lobby was all polished wood and glass trophy cases. Photographs lined the walls, mostly older white men in hunting gear or competition stance, with a few younger faces mixed in. The most prominent photos featured a handsome blonde teenager holding various trophies. Chase Ellison, she presumed, noting his confident smile and the way he held his rifle like it was an extension of himself. Layla approached the front desk, where a middle-aged woman was typing on a computer. She cleared her throat. "Excuse me, I'd like to sign up for range time." The woman looked up, her eyes quickly scanning Layla from head to toe, taking in her simple jeans, worn sneakers, and the second-hand rifle case she'd bought from a thrift store. "Are you lost, sweetheart?" Layla straightened her spine. "No, ma'am. I'm here to shoot." "This isn't a carnival shooting gallery," the woman said with a thin smile. "We're a members-only facility." "Your website says you offer day passes for non-members," Layla countered, having done her research. The woman's smile tightened. "That's correct. A day pass is $75, plus lane rental and target fees." Layla had expected this and had saved accordingly from her last paycheck. "That's fine." As the woman reluctantly began to process her paperwork, Layla became aware of voices behind her. She turned to see a group of teenagers about her age entering the lobby, all carrying high-end equipment. At their center was the blonde boy from the photographs, Chase Ellison himself, somehow even more polished in person. "Looks like your paperwork isn't complete," the receptionist said loudly enough for the others to hear. "You need a guardian's signature if you're under 18. "I'm 18, Layla said quickly. It wasn't true. She was 17 and would be for another 4 months, but she couldn't risk being turned away. Chase and his friends had noticed the exchange. He sauntered over, his custom rifle case slung casually over his shoulder. "Problem here, Mrs. Winters?" "No problem, Chase," the receptionist replied warmly. "Just explaining our membership policies." Chase turned his attention to Layla, eyeing her battered rifle case with barely concealed amusement. "First time?" he asked, though it wasn't really a question. "Yes," Layla admitted, seeing no point in lying. "I could give you some lessons," he offered with exaggerated generosity, causing his friends to snicker. "Shooting's not as easy as it looks in the movies." "I'll figure it out," Layla replied coolly. Chase shrugged. "Suit yourself, don't say I didn't offer to help." He turned to his friends and added in a stage whisper, "Someone should warn the safety officer," triggering another round of laughter as they headed toward the premium lanes. After completing the paperwork and paying a fee that hurt her wallet considerably, Layla was directed to Lane 12, the farthest from the entrance, and clearly the least maintained of the available options. "This is ridiculous," Denise Carter's voice cut through the small living room later that evening. She paced back and forth, her nurse's scrub still on from her double shift. $350 for a rifle? Plus all those range? Fees. What were you thinking, Layla? Layla sat on the worn couch, hands clasped between her knees. "Mom, I know it sounds crazy." "It doesn't sound crazy." "It is crazy," Denise interrupted. "We're 3 months behind on the electric bill. Your senior year fees are coming up, and you're spending money on… what, some fancy hobby?" "It's not just a hobby," Layla protested. "It could be my way out. There are scholarships." Denise shook her head, her voice softening but still firm. "Baby, listen to me. I love that you have dreams, but you need to be realistic. Those scholarships go to kids who've been shooting since they could walk, with parents who can afford coaches and equipment." She sighed heavily. "We need to be practical about things that aren't made for folks like us." The words stung, but Layla recognized the love and fear behind them. Her mother wasn't being cruel. She was being protective, trying to shield her daughter from disappointment. "Can I at least try?" Layla asked quietly. "I'll keep all my shifts at the diner. I won't ask for any money for the range. Just let me try." Denise looked at her daughter for a long moment. "Your father was stubborn like you," she said finally, a rare mention of the man who died when Layla was just 5. "Never knew when to quit either." She didn't explicitly give permission, but she didn't forbid it either. Layla took it as a reluctant yes. That night, long after her mother had gone to bed, Layla sat cross-legged on her bedroom floor with her laptop open to a YouTube video titled Advanced Rifle Marksmanship Techniques. The room was dark except for the screen's glow, illuminating her determined face as she watched a champion shooter demonstrate proper breathing and trigger control. Beside her lay the Winchester, freshly cleaned and oiled, according to another tutorial she'd watched earlier. She practiced dry firing, pulling the trigger with no ammunition, focusing on keeping her hand steady and her movements smooth. "I belong there," she whispered to herself as the video ended. "And I'll prove it." She set her alarm for 5 a.m. The range opened at 6, and she wanted to get some practice in before her morning shift at the diner. Sleep could wait. Dreams couldn't. What Layla didn't notice during her first frustrating day at the range was the quiet older man working in the equipment room. Mr. Ramirez moved methodically among the racks of rifles and supplies, organizing and repairing, seemingly just part of the background. But his dark eyes had followed Layla's progress throughout the day, noting her determination despite the obvious setbacks. And when she finally left, shoulders slumped but chin still high, there was a quiet glint in his eye. Recognition, perhaps, of something familiar and long forgotten. The next morning arrived with a chill in the air as Layla walked through the front doors of Silver Creek Range. Her breath caught slightly when she saw that the same receptionist was working the front desk. "Lane 12 again?" the woman asked without looking up. "If that's what's available," Layla replied evenly, though inside she was disappointed. Lane 12 had a wobbly bench, inconsistent lighting, and targets that were visibly more worn than the others. Once set up, Layla carefully loaded her rifle, going through the safety procedures she'd memorized from her late-night research. Her first shot went wide, not even hitting the paper target. Her second clipped the very edge. By her 5th attempt, she was at least consistently hitting the outer rings, but nowhere near the center. From 2 lanes over, a pair of men in matching club jackets glanced her way and then whispered to each other, not bothering to hide their amusement. "Think she knows which end the bullet comes out of?" one said loudly enough for her to hear. "Probably saw it in a movie and thought it looked cool," replied his companion. "She'll be gone by next week." Layla gritted her teeth and tried to focus on her next shot, but her concentration was broken. The bullet went wide again. Fighting back the burning sensation in her eyes, she reloaded and continued, determined not to give them the satisfaction of seeing her quit. After an hour of frustrating practice and minimal improvement, Layla packed up her rifle. As she was leaving, someone bumped into her shoulder, nearly causing her to drop her case. Oops, my bad, said a girl with deep brown skin and a shock of purple-tipped braids. Didn't see you there with all these platinum membership types taking up all the oxygen. Despite her frustration, Layla found herself smiling. No problem. I'm Samira, the girl offered, hiking her backpack higher on her shoulder. Samira Collins. You new here? Layla Carter. And yeah, second day. Samira glanced around theatrically before leaning in. Word of advice? This place runs on who knows who and whose daddy has the most money. It's like the Olympic Games of exclusivity. Noticed, Layla said dryly. What brings you here then? Oh, I'm in the VIP section by birth, Samira said with an exaggerated eye roll. My dad's one of the investors. I'm just here because he thinks it'll look good on my college apps. Diverse interests, and all that. Before Layla could respond, a voice called out from behind them. Miss Collins, your father's looking for you. They turned to see an older man in a maintenance uniform. He nodded politely at Layla before returning his attention to Samira. Tell him I'll be there in a minute, Mr. Ramirez, Samira replied. She turned back to Layla. Duty calls. See you around the exclusive club, newbie. With a playful salute, she headed toward the main office. As Layla turned to leave, Mr. Ramirez spoke quietly. Your grip is too tight. Breathe out as you pull the trigger, not before. Then he was gone, moving toward the equipment room as if he'd said nothing at all. Layla stood there, surprised by the unexpected advice. She glanced down at her hands, realizing she had indeed been gripping the rifle like it might try to escape. Unable to afford daily visits to Silver Creek, Layla had to get creative with her practice. Behind an abandoned warehouse on the edge of town was a small junkyard, not official, just a place where people illegally dumped old appliances and furniture. It wasn't safe or legal to fire actual rounds there, but it was perfect for stance and position practice. Layla balanced on top of old tires, forcing herself to maintain a steady position on uneven surfaces. She set up cans and bottles on a rusty washing machine, practicing her aim and dry firing for hours. The techniques were unorthodox, nothing like the formal stances she saw at the range, but they forced her to adapt, to find stability within instability. On her third visit to Silver Creek, Layla noticed something was off with her rifle. The sight felt different, and no matter how carefully she aimed, her shots kept going slightly to the left. After several frustrating attempts, she examined the rifle more closely and discovered that a small screw on the sight mount had been loosened. As she was tightening it, she heard familiar laughter. Chase Ellison and 3 of his friends were leaving the premium lanes, their expensive equipment gleaming under the lights. I'm telling you, Dad's bringing in a scout from the Olympic development team next month, Chase was saying. Already got my application ready for the national qualifiers. One of his friends noticed Layla and nudged Chase. Speaking of qualifiers, how's our new charity case doing? Chase glanced her way, his smile cutting. Still here, huh? Stubborn. Layla focused on her rifle, pretending not to hear them. You know, Chase continued, raising his voice slightly. Some people just don't get that not everyone belongs everywhere. It's like me showing up at, I don't know, a soul food restaurant or something. His friends laughed as they walked past, leaving Layla with burning cheeks and trembling hands. For a moment, she considered packing up her things and never returning. This had been a foolish dream from the start. She looked down at the rifle, in her hands. The rifle she'd sacrificed her savings for, the one that represented everything she hoped to become. Walking away now would mean Chase was right, that her mother was right, that everyone who said she didn't belong was right. With deliberate care, she finished adjusting the sight, loaded the chamber, and took her position once more. This time, when she fired, the bullet hit just inside the center ring. That weekend, Samira surprised Layla by showing up at Molly's diner during her shift. Your milkshakes any good? Samira asked, sliding into a booth in Layla's section. Best in town, Layla replied, surprised but pleased to see a friendly face. What brings you to this side of Silver Creek? Curiosity, Samira said with a shrug. And I was thinking, my dad has this small target set up in our backyard. Nothing fancy, but better than Lane 12's prehistoric equipment. You should come by. Sometime to practice. Layla hesitated. Won't your dad mind? He's in Chicago 4 days a week for work. Mom couldn't care less what I do as long as I maintain my GPA. Samira took a sip of water. Besides, it's not like the range where everything's so unofficial. Just two girls hanging out, occasionally shooting at stuff. The offer was tempting. A real target board, a chance to practice without the judgmental eyes of Silver Creek members. Okay, Layla agreed. When? Samira grinned. Tomorrow after your shift? I'll text you the address. As Samira was leaving the diner, an older gentleman entered, taking a seat at the counter. Layla recognized him immediately as Mr. Ramirez from the range. Coffee, black, he said when she approached with her notepad. His voice was softer than she expected, with a slight accent she couldn't quite place. Coming right up, she replied, stealing glances at him as she worked. He was reading a newspaper, seemingly oblivious to her curiosity. When she brought his coffee, he thanked her quietly. As he reached for his wallet to pay, something fell from his pocket and clinked against the counter, a tarnished coin about the size of a $50. Layla picked it up to hand back to him and noticed it was a medallion engraved with National Marksman Championship, 1984. Their eyes met as she returned it, an unspoken question in hers. Mr. Ramirez simply tucked the medallion back into his pocket, left exact change for the coffee, plus a generous tip, and walked out without another word, leaving Layla staring after him in confusion and growing curiosity. The next evening, true to her word, Samira texted an address to Layla. After changing out of her diner uniform, Layla made her way to the affluent north side of town, where the houses sat on manicured lots with circular driveways. The Collins residence was an imposing two-story colonial with white columns and professionally landscaped gardens. Around back, Samira called from a side gate when she spotted Layla approaching hesitantly. Welcome to the boring palace. The rice backyard was vast, with a pool covered for the season and a cabana that looked larger than Layla's entire house. At the far end was a small shooting range, professional-grade target boards mounted against a reinforced backstop. Your dad has this just in your yard? Layla asked, amazed. He entertains business associates who hunt, Samira explained with an indifferent wave. It's all about impressing people with money in this town. Anyway, it's yours to use whenever he's not around, which is most of the time. For the next 2 hours, Layla practiced with a freedom she hadn't experienced at Silver Creek. Samira offered tips occasionally. She was a decent shot herself, though she clearly didn't share her father's passion for the sport, and they fell into an easy rhythm of practice and conversation. So why shooting? Samira asked during a break. Of all the things to get into. Layla thought about it as she reloaded. I don't know exactly. There's something about it. The focus, the precision. When I'm lining up a shot, everything else disappears. It's just me, the rifle, and the target. She paused. Plus, it feels like proving something. To who? Everyone. Myself. Layla shrugged. Does it matter? Samira grinned. Nope. Good enough for me. As they were packing up, Samira mentioned something that caught Layla's attention. You know, if you want some real practice, without all the Silver Creek drama, there's this underground competition that happens once a month. Nothing official, just local shooters testing their skills. No registration, no membership fees. Is it legal? Layla asked, immediately intrigued but cautious. Gray area, Samira admitted. They use private property. Everyone brings their own equipment. It's not sanctioned by any official organization, but it's not exactly illegal either. Just underground. Layla considered this. An unofficial competition would mean no one checking credentials, no one looking down on her second-hand rifle, no Chase Ellison and his arrogant friends. When's the next one? This Friday night. Old barn out by Miller's Creek. I can take you, if you want. Layla thought about her mother, who would definitely not approve, about the risks of participating in an unsanctioned event, about the Silver Creek members who would surely mock her if they knew. Then she thought about the feeling of that perfect shot she'd made after fixing her sight, the sense of belonging that had washed over her in that moment. I'm in, she said, firmly. But I don't want anyone to know it's me. Not yet. Samira's eyes lit up. Mysterious incognito shooter? I love it. Don't worry. We'll come up with a fake name for you. No one will know. As they walked back to the front of the house, neither of them noticed the dark sedan parked across the street or Mr. Ramirez sitting quietly behind the wheel, watching with thoughtful eyes as Layla headed home with a new determination in her step. The old barn at Miller's Creek looked abandoned from the outside, its weathered boards and rusted metal roof blending into the darkness. As Samira's car pulled up the dirt road, Layla could see faint light seeping through cracks in the walls and hear muffled voices carrying across the otherwise silent night. You ready for this? Samira asked, killing the engine. Layla nodded, though her stomach was in knots. As ready as I'll ever be. Remember, you're Lisa Thompson tonight, Samira reminded her with a wink. Just a girl from the next county over, who likes to shoot. Inside, the barn was transformed. Floodlights hung from the rafters, illuminating a makeshift shooting gallery. Hay bales were stacked against the far wall as backstops, with paper targets pinned to wooden boards. Tables lined one side where people displayed rifles, ammunition, and other equipment. The crowd was nothing like Silver Creek. Men and women of all ages milled about, some in worn jeans and work boots, others in hunting gear. A few were counting out cash for what appeared to be an entry fee, while others examined each other's rifles with appreciative murmurs. $10 to enter, winner takes the pot, a burly man with a clipboard explained when they approached. He eyed Layla skeptically. You shooting or just watching, kid? Shooting, Layla replied firmly, pulling out a crumpled $10 bill. The man shrugged. Your funeral. Name? Lisa Thompson, she answered, the false name feeling strange on her tongue. As they waited, Layla observed the other shooters. There were about 20 in all, ranging from teenagers not much older than herself to gray-haired veterans with steady hands and focused eyes. Their equipment varied widely. Some had high-end rifles that would fit right in at Silver Creek, while others used simpler models that looked well-loved. An old-timer with a bullhorn called for attention. All right, folks, you know the rules. 3 rounds, best score advances. No scopes over 4x, no laser sights. First round is static targets. At 50 yards, Layla was assigned to lane 4, between a middle-aged woman in flannel and a young man with a military haircut. The woman gave her a friendly nod, but the man just snorted when he saw her second-hand rifle. First time? He asked with a smirk. Layla didn't respond, focusing instead on preparing her rifle and checking her ammunition. Shooters ready, called the old-timer. 3, 2, 1, fire! The first few shots were a disaster. Layla's nerves got the better of her, and her bullets strayed far from the center rings. The crowd's reactions ranged from encouraging cheers to dismissive laughter. By the 5th shot, Layla forced herself to block out everything. She remembered Mr. Ramirez's advice about her grip being too tight and consciously relaxed her fingers. She recalled the countless hours of practice, finding stability in unstable conditions. Her next shot was better, and the one after that, better still. For the final round, the organizers had set up a trick shot. 2 empty cans suspended from ropes, swinging gently in opposite directions. The challenge was to shoot through both cans with a single bullet. Impossible, someone muttered as the rules were explained. Layla watched as shooter after shooter tried and failed. Some hit one can, but missed the second. Most missed entirely. The young man who had smirked at her equipment came closest, nicking. The first can, but missing the second by inches. When it was Layla's turn, she stepped up to the line with a strange sense of calm. The moving targets reminded her of the junkyard, where she'd practiced aiming at objects balanced on precarious piles of trash, learning to predict movement and find patterns in chaos. She took a deep breath, exhaled slowly, and squeezed the trigger precisely as both cans crossed paths. The crack of her rifle was followed by the distinctive ping-ping of the bullet passing through both cans. For a moment, there was complete silence. Then someone whistled low. Well, I'll be damned. Applause broke out, hesitant at first, then growing stronger. The old-timer with the bullhorn checked the cans, then raised his arms. Clean through. Both targets. Layla lowered her rifle, a slow smile spreading across her face. For the first time since she'd started shooting, she felt a genuine sense of accomplishment. Not just pride in a good shot, but validation from others who understood what it meant. What she didn't notice was the older man standing in the shadows. At the back of the barn, Coach Donovan had come to the underground match out of boredom, not expecting to see anything remarkable. Now his weathered face showed interest as he watched the young girl accept congratulations from the other shooters. Layla didn't win the overall competition. That honor went to the woman in flannel, who turned out to be a former military sharpshooter, but her trick shot had made an impression. As she and Samira were leaving, several people stopped her to ask where she'd learned to shoot, offering tips and invitations to other unofficial events. "Told you," Samira said smugly as they walked to the car. "These are real shooters, not those country club posers at Silver Creek." Layla couldn't stop smiling. "Did you see their faces when I made that shot? For once nobody was looking at me like I didn't belong." "Enjoy it while it lasts," came a voice from behind them. They turned to see a man leaning against a pickup truck, lighting a cigarette. In the flare of the match, Layla recognized him as one of the older competitors who had observed silently throughout the event. "Donovan," he said gruffly, by way of introduction. "That was a nice shot back there. Lucky, but nice." "It wasn't luck," Layla replied, bristling slightly. Donovan raised an eyebrow. "No? Then do it again sometime. Prove it. Wasn't a fluke. Talent shows up consistently, not just when the stars align." Before Layla could respond, he climbed into his truck and drove away, leaving a trail of dust in the night air. The following Monday, Layla arrived at Silver Creek with a new confidence in her step. The validation from the underground match had changed something in her. A confirmation that her passion wasn't misplaced, that she had actual talent worth nurturing. As she was signing in, she noticed Samira in a heated conversation with an older man in an expensive suit near the management office. Samira caught her eye and gave a tight smile before returning to what appeared to be an argument with the man. "Lane 12?" the receptionist asked with the same dismissive tone as always. "Actually, I'd like Lane 7 today, if it's available," Layla replied. Lane 7 was in the middle section, not the premium area, but significantly better maintained than her usual spot. The receptionist looked up, clearly surprised by the request. "Lane 7 is reserved for—" "It's fine, Mrs. Winters," interrupted a voice. Mr. Ramirez stood nearby, clipboard in hand. "Lane 7 had a lighting issue yesterday, but I've fixed it. Miss Carter can use it today." Mrs. Winters looked like she wanted to object but merely nodded curtly. "Lane 7 it is." As Layla gathered her things, Mr. Ramirez moved past her toward the equipment room. "Nice shooting Friday night," he said so quietly that she almost missed it. Layla froze. "You were there?" But he was already gone, disappearing through a staff door without another word. Her practice session that day went remarkably well. The better lighting and stable bench of Lane 7 made a noticeable difference, and the confidence from her success at the underground match translated into more consistent shooting. She hit the center rings repeatedly, each shot building on the success of the last. As she was packing up, Samira approached, looking troubled. "Everything okay?" Layla asked. "That man earlier—" "My father," Samira said with a grimace. "He's not happy about me wasting time with the help, as he so eloquently put it. Someone told him they saw us talking." Layla's stomach dropped. "I don't want to cause problems for you. Please," Samira scoffed. "He causes plenty of problems all by himself." She lowered her voice. "Listen, he's planning some big investor meeting here next month. Some kind of exhibition match to attract new members. Very exclusive, very prestigious, very boring. But he specifically said that certain elements need to be kept away to maintain the club's image." "Elements?" Layla repeated, though she understood exactly what Samira's father had meant. "His words, not mine," Samira assured her quickly. "I just wanted to warn you that he's on the warpath about club standards or whatever." That evening, as Layla returned home from her shift at the diner, she found her mother waiting for her in the living room. On the coffee table lay a crumpled flyer for the underground match at Miller's Creek. "Want to explain this?" Denise asked, her voice tight with controlled anger. "I found it in your jacket pocket while doing laundry." Layla's heart sank. "Mom, it's not what you think. Not what I think." Denise stood up, the flyer clutched in her hand. "It's exactly what I think. Some illegal shooting competition in the middle of nowhere? Do you have any idea how dangerous that is?" "It wasn't illegal," Layla protested. "Just unofficial. And I was careful." "Careful?" Denise's voice rose. "You're 17 years old, sneaking around with guns. What if something had happened? What if you'd been hurt? Or arrested?" "But I wasn't," Layla insisted. "And I won't be. I know what I'm doing." Denise shook her head, tears of frustration welling in her eyes. "No, you don't. That's exactly the problem. You think this is some game, some way to prove yourself, but all you're doing is setting yourself up for heartache, or worse." "I made that shot," Layla said quietly. "The one everyone said was impossible. I made it." "And what does that prove?" Denise demanded. "That you can shoot at cans in a barn? That's not a future, Layla. That's not security." "It could be," Layla insisted. "There are scholarships." "For who?" Denise interrupted. "Not for kids who learn to shoot in junkyards and barns. Not for kids without connections or fancy equipment or years of professional training." The words stung because they echoed Layla's own deepest fears. "So I'm just supposed to give up? Accept that some things aren't for people like me?" Denise's expression softened slightly. "I'm not saying give up on your dreams. I'm saying be realistic about them. Find dreams that won't break your heart or get you killed." "I forbid you from competing in these underground matches again," she continued firmly. "You're humiliating yourself chasing something that isn't meant for you." The words hung heavy, in the air between them. Layla wanted to argue further, but the exhaustion in her mother's eyes stopped her. Denise worked double shifts to keep them afloat. Her caution came from love, from fear of seeing Layla hurt. "Fine," Layla said finally, though the agreement tasted bitter on her tongue. No more underground matches. She didn't add that she had no intention of giving up shooting altogether. The next day at Silver Creek, Layla found Mr. Ramirez sitting on a bench outside the main entrance, apparently on a break. He nodded to her as she approached. "Miss Carter." "Mr. Ramirez." She hesitated, then sat beside him. "You were at the match Friday." It wasn't a question this time. He inclined his head slightly in acknowledgement. "Why?" she asked. "Curiosity," he replied simply. "I've been watching you practice. You have an unusual approach. Creative." Layla wasn't sure if it was a compliment or a criticism. "I'm self-taught, mostly, I can tell." A faint smile crossed his weathered face. "It's not a bad thing. Sometimes the unconventional way is more authentic." They sat in silence for a moment, watching cars pull into the parking lot. Members with expensive equipment cases emerged, greeting each other with the easy familiarity of belonging. "You were a champion," Layla said finally. "I saw your medallion, National Marksman Championship 1984. Mr. Ramirez's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. "A long time ago." "What happened?" He was quiet for so long that Layla thought he wasn't going to answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was subdued. "I was accused of cheating, using modified ammunition, the kind of accusation that sticks, even after it's disproven." He looked at his hands, strong, capable hands with calluses that spoke of decades of work. "No one stood up for me, not one of my so-called peers. It was easier to let me fall than to admit the system could be wrong." "But you still work here," Layla observed. "At Silver Creek." A rueful smile. "Ironic, isn't it? The closest I can get to what I love is cleaning other people's rifles." He stood abruptly, as if he'd already said too much. "Your stance is improving, but you're still anticipating the recoil. Let the shot surprise you sometimes." With that, he returned to the building, leaving Layla with a better understanding of why he might have taken an interest in her struggle. That evening, alone in her room. Layla held her Winchester rifle and felt the weight of all it represented. Her savings, her dreams, her defiance of expectations. Tears welled in her eyes, but they weren't tears of defeat. They were tears of resolution. "I won't just do this for me," she whispered to the silent room. "I'll do it for everyone who's been told they don't belong, for everyone who's been pushed aside or forgotten." She didn't know that at that very moment across town, Samira was sitting in her father's study, nodding reluctantly as Mr. Collins outlined exactly what he needed from her. "Find out her weaknesses," he was saying. "What makes her tick? What would make her crack under pressure? I can't have some untrained novice embarrassing this club or tarnishing our reputation." "She's actually pretty good," Samira ventured. "You should see." "I don't need to see anything," Mr. Collins interrupted. "What I need is for you to remember where your loyalties lie. With your family, with this club, with maintaining the standards we've built over generations." Samira looked down at her hands. "Yes, father." "Good girl," he said, his tone softening. "Now, about that summer internship at the law firm you wanted." The early morning mist clung to the grass as Layla made her way through a small clearing in the woods behind the industrial park. A rusted pickup truck was already parked in the makeshift clearing, and a tall, lean figure stood silently beside it. "You're late," Coach Donovan said by way of greeting, checking his watch. 5 minutes you could have spent improving." "Sorry," Layla replied, slightly out of breath from the half-jog she'd done from the bus stop. "The first bus doesn't run until—" "I don't want excuses," Donovan interrupted. "I want results. Now show me your stance." It had been 3 days since she'd received a cryptic note after her shift at the diner. "Meet me at dawn. Bring your courage. D." She'd known immediately it was from the gruff man from the underground match. Now, as the sun began to peek through the trees, she found herself undergoing the most grueling training she'd ever experienced. Donovan wasn't just teaching her to shoot. He was remaking her entire approach from the ground up. "Wider feet," he barked. "Weight distributed evenly. Breathe from your diaphragm, not your chest." Again, Layla adjusted her stance and took aim at the crude target he'd set up, a small metal plate hanging from a tree branch about 70 yards away. "Too slow," Donovan criticized as she fired. "In competition, every second counts. Again." For 2 hours, he drilled her relentlessly, shooting from different positions, shooting after running in place to elevate her heart rate. Nothing was ever good enough, but occasionally, very occasionally, his curt nod told her she was on the right track. As they packed up, Layla finally asked the question that had been bothering her since she received his note. "Why are you helping me?" Donovan secured his rifle case before answering. "I coached the national youth team for 15 years. Got pushed out when I disagreed with their selection criteria." "You mean when you wanted to include shooters who weren't from the right backgrounds?" Layla guessed. Donovan's mouth twitched in what might have been the ghost of a smile. "Something like that. Now I spot talent where others don't bother to look. And you've got talent, kid. Raw, unpolished, but real." "So this is about proving a point?" Layla asked. "This is about excellence," Donovan corrected firmly. "True excellence doesn't care about your zip code or your daddy's bank account. It only cares about your dedication, your discipline, and your drive." He fixed her with a pointed look. "You've got all three. The question is whether you're willing to push yourself beyond what you think you're capable of." "I am," Layla said without hesitation. "Good, because there's no shortcuts to excellence, no easy path." He handed her a worn notebook. "Drills. Every day. Dawn, here, Tuesday and Thursday. The rest you do on your own time." As Layla took the notebook, Donovan added, "One more thing. The Silver Creek Open is coming up next month. It's the biggest regional competition of the year. Winner gets an invitation to the National Junior Championship and a scholarship." Layla's heart skipped a beat. "I've heard of it. You're going to enter," Donovan stated matter-of-factly, "and you're going to show everyone exactly what they've been overlooking." 3 days later, Layla stood in line at the Silver Creek front desk, clutching the entry form for the Open. The lobby was busier than usual, with posters announcing the prestigious event plastered everywhere. Chase Ellison's face featured prominently. Defending champion seeks third consecutive title. When it was finally her turn, the receptionist, Mrs. Winters as always, looked at the form with barely concealed disdain. The Silver Creek Open is an invitational tournament, Miss Carter. The website says it's open to all members and day pass holders with a minimum of 10 range sessions completed, Layla countered. She'd researched the rules thoroughly. Yes, well, Mrs. Winters sniffed. There are other requirements as well. Proper equipment standards, for instance, and all paperwork needs to be submitted at least 3 weeks in advance. It says 2 weeks on the website, Layla pointed out, and we're at 16 days now. Additionally, Mrs. Winters continued as if Layla hadn't spoken, there's a certification form that needs to be signed by a club-approved instructor, verifying your range safety knowledge and basic competency. Layla frowned. She'd scoured the entry requirements and found no mention of this certification. That's not listed in the requirements. It must have been an oversight, Mrs. Winters replied with a cold smile. Regardless, without it, I cannot accept your entry. Is there a problem here? A deep voice inquired. Layla turned to see an older man in an expensive suit, the same man she'd seen arguing with Samira. Mr. Collins, she presumed. No problem. At all, Mr. Collins, Mrs. Winters replied quickly. Just explaining some of our competition requirements to Miss Carter. Mr. Collins appraised Layla with calculating eyes. You're interested in competing in the Open? Yes, sir, Layla replied, striving to keep her voice steady and respectful despite her frustration. Admirable ambition, he said, though his tone suggested otherwise. However, Mrs. Winters is correct. We have certain standards that must be maintained. The Silver Creek Open is our showcase event, attended by college scouts, potential sponsors, and regional media. We simply cannot have unprepared participants. The implication was clear as glass. It wasn't about preparation, it was about presentation, about who they wanted representing Silver Creek to the outside world. I understand, Layla said, though what she understood was far more than what he'd said aloud. Thank you for your time. As she turned to leave, her shoulders squared with dignity despite the rejection, she nearly collided with Chase Ellison entering the lobby with his usual entourage. Whoa, careful there, Chase said, stepping back. Then recognition dawned in his eyes. Wait, don't tell me you were trying to enter the Open? He laughed, looking around at his friends. That's adorable. Layla said nothing, attempting to move past him. You should stick to watching from the sidelines, Chase continued, blocking her path slightly. The Open is for serious shooters, not whatever this is. He gestured dismissively at her worn jacket and second-hand rifle case. Get out of my way, Chase, Layla said quietly but firmly. Something in her tone must have surprised him, because he actually stepped aside, though his smirk remained. Sure thing, wouldn't want to delay your trip back to wherever it is you come from. Outside in the parking lot, Layla fought back tears of frustration. She'd known it wouldn't be easy, but she hadn't expected such blatant obstruction. They weren't even trying to hide their prejudice. They're betting against you, said a voice behind her. She turned to find Mr. Ramirez leaning against a maintenance cart, a cigarette dangling from his fingers. What? Chase's father, Mr. Ramirez clarified. He's organized a private betting pool among the members, odds against you even qualifying, let alone placing. He took a long drag of his cigarette. 20 to 1 against, last I heard. Layla blinked, processing this information. You mean they're betting I'll fail? They're betting you won't even get the chance to try, Mr. Ramirez corrected. Makes for better odds that way. The unfairness of it all hit Layla like a physical blow. Not only were they trying to keep her out, they were making money on the certainty of her exclusion. Mr. Ramirez must have seen the defeat threatening to overtake her, because he added, You know what the interesting thing about long odds is, though? When they're beaten, they pay out big. A glint appeared in his eyes. Very big. That night, Layla returned home to find her mother sitting at the kitchen table with a small metal box open before her. Inside were photographs, medals, and what appeared to be military dog tags. "Mom?" Layla asked hesitantly. "What's all this?" Denise looked up, her expression unreadable. "Your father's things. I don't take them out much. Too many memories." She picked up a faded photograph of a handsome young man in army fatigues, a rifle slung over his shoulder. "Did you know he was a marksman in his unit?" "One of the best they had, according to his captain." Layla sat down slowly, stunned by this revelation. "You never told me." "It hurt too much," Denise admitted quietly. "After he died, I put away anything that reminded me of what we lost." She picked up a small medal with a rifle emblem. "He won this in a division competition. Said he was going to teach you to shoot someday when you were old enough." Tears welled in Layla's eyes as she gently took the medal, running her thumb over its worn surface. "Is that why you've been so against me shooting? Because it reminds you of him?" Denise sighed deeply. "Partly. And partly because I've spent your whole life trying to protect you from disappointment, from doors closing in your face. But maybe," she continued, her voice growing stronger, "I've been protecting you from the wrong things. Maybe instead of shielding you from the fight, I should have been preparing you for it." Layla looked at her mother in surprise. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," Denise replied, meeting her daughter's gaze steadily, "that if you're determined to do this, really determined, then maybe it's time I stopped standing in your way. Maybe it's time I stood beside you instead." For the first time since Layla had bought her rifle, she felt the weight of disapproval lift from her shoulders. With her mother's blessing, the path ahead, difficult as it remained, suddenly seemed possible. What she didn't know was that across town, another conversation was taking place that would make that path even more treacherous. In the luxurious study of the Collins home, Samira stood uncomfortably before her father's desk. "Well?" Mr. Collins demanded. "What did you find out?" Samira hesitated, guilt gnawing at her conscience. "She's been training with someone, early mornings before the range opens." "Who?" "I'm not sure," Samira admitted. "Some older guy, ex-military type." Mr. Collins leaned back in his leather chair, processing this information. "Interesting. And what about weaknesses? Pressure points?" Samira forced herself to continue, hating every word. "She tenses up when people watch her, gets distracted by comments, and her rifle's sight is sensitive. Even a small adjustment throws off her aim completely." "Good," Mr. Collins nodded, approvingly. "Very good, Samira. I knew I could count on you." The following day, as Layla arrived for her qualifying session, Mr. Ramirez had arranged for her to demonstrate her skills to an independent judge who might override the certification requirement. She found her rifle's scope completely misaligned. No matter how she adjusted it, she couldn't get it back to the precise calibration she'd perfected over weeks of practice. "Nervous?" Chase asked with mock sympathy as he passed by her lane. "First big competition jitters are totally normal. For some people, anyway." When the judge arrived to evaluate her, she performed far below her actual skill level. "I'm sorry, Miss Carter," the judge said afterward, not unkindly. "But I can't recommend you for competition level based on what I've seen today, perhaps with more practice." As she packed up her rifle, a club official approached with an apologetic expression. "Miss Carter, I'm afraid I need to speak with you about a rules violation." "Rules violation?" Layla repeated, confused. "What are you talking about?" "One of our members has reported seeing you use non-regulation ammunition during practice. That's a serious safety violation and grounds for immediate suspension of range privileges." Layla stared at him in disbelief. "That's not true. I've never used anything but standard ammunition." "Nevertheless," the official continued, "we'll need to conduct an investigation. In the meantime, your range access is suspended, effective immediately." As she was escorted out of the building, she spotted Samira watching from a distance, an expression of unmistakable guilt on her face. Their eyes met for a brief, charged moment, and in that instant, Layla understood everything. The betrayal hit her like a physical blow. Samira, her only friend in this world, the person who had encouraged and supported her, had been working against her all along. As she reached her bus stop, her phone buzzed with a text from Samira. "We need to talk, I can explain." Layla stared at the message for a long moment before typing her reply. "There's nothing to explain. I trusted you. That was my mistake." As the bus approached, Layla spotted Mr. Ramirez walking toward her, a long, slender case tucked under his arm. His expression was solemn but determined. "I heard what happened," he said simply. "They won't let you back in, not for the qualifying rounds, not for practice, not for anything." Layla nodded, beyond words at this point. Mr. Ramirez held out the case. "This was mine, from before. It's seen better days, but it's true. Never misses where it's aimed." Layla hesitated, recognizing what he was offering. Not just a rifle, but a legacy. A chance to continue what he'd been forced to abandon. "Take it," he urged. "Go finish what they told us we couldn't." As Layla accepted the case, determination hardened in her chest. They had tried to block her entry, tamper with her equipment, and tarnish her reputation. They had even turned her friend against her, but they had made one critical mistake. They had made it personal. And now, armed with Ramirez's championship rifle and a renewed sense of purpose, Layla was more dangerous than ever. Layla sat alone at the counter of Molly's diner long after closing time. The overhead lights were dimmed, leaving only the glow from the kitchen and the neon open sign that she hadn't bothered to switch off. In front of her lay Ramirez's championship rifle, its gleaming barrel catching the soft light. She ran her fingers over the worn stock, feeling the small nicks and scratches that told stories of competitions long past. The weight of failure pressed down on her shoulders. Banned from Silver Creek, her own rifle sabotaged, betrayed by Samira. The path that had already seemed impossibly steep now appeared completely insurmountable. The bell above the door jingled, startling her. Layla looked up to see her mother standing in the entrance, still wearing her scrubs from the hospital. "Thought I might find you here," Denise said softly, making her way to the counter. She placed 2 steaming mugs of cocoa on the counter, having clearly stopped at home to make them first. "Molly called. Said you asked to lock up." Layla nodded, wrapping her hands around the warm mug. "I needed some time to think." Denise settled onto the stool beside her daughter, her eyes falling on the rifle. "Mr. Ramirez's." "You know him?" Layla asked, surprised. "Not personally," Denise replied. "But your father mentioned him once, said he was one of the best natural shooters he'd ever seen." She ran a gentle finger along the barrel. "Beautiful piece." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, sipping their cocoa. Then Denise reached into her large purse and pulled out a worn manila folder. "Found something else while going through your father's things." She opened the folder to reveal dozens of paper targets, each marked with tight groupings of shots. Dates and scores were carefully noted in the margins. "You kept these?" Layla whispered, stunned. "All this time?" Denise nodded, a soft smile playing on her lips. "Every single one. From the first day you set up that ridiculous little range in our backyard with sticks and stones." She touched one target gently. "I was watching, you know. Always watching. Always a little bit proud, even when I was telling you to be practical instead." Tears welled in Layla's eyes. "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because I was scared," Denise admitted. "Scared you'd get your heart broken by a world that doesn't always make room for people like us. Scared you'd aim for something and miss, and I wouldn't be able to protect you from that pain." She took Layla's hand. "But I was wrong to let my fear stand in your way. Your father would have been so disappointed in me." "No," Layla said firmly. "He would have understood. You were just trying to protect me." "Maybe," Denise conceded. "But there comes a point when protection becomes limitation." She gestured to the rifle. "So what are you going to do with that?" Layla looked down at Ramirez's championship rifle, feeling its weight and history. In that moment, something shifted inside her, a new resolve hardening like steel. "I'm going to finish what I started," she said with quiet determination. They might have kicked me out of Silver Creek, but they can't stop me from competing in the open. The rules say any qualified shooter can enter, even non-members. And how will you qualify without access to their range? A slow smile spread across Layla's face. I'll find a way. I always do. For the next 2 weeks, Layla trained harder than ever before. With her mother's blessing and Ramirez's rifle, she rose before dawn each day to meet Coach Donovan at their makeshift range in the woods. His methods were unorthodox and demanding, but Layla threw herself into them completely. Again, Donovan would bark as she hit targets from increasingly difficult positions. Faster, more precise, no room for error. She combined his formal techniques with her own street-smart methods, developing a hybrid style that played to her unique strengths. Where traditional shooters stood rigid and still, Layla found ways to use movement to her advantage. Where they relied on perfect conditions, she thrived in chaos. In the afternoons, she practiced in the junkyard, setting up makeshift targets that moved unpredictably in the wind. Sometimes Mr. Ramirez would silently appear, offering subtle adjustments to her form or equipment without ever directly instructing her. Word began to spread about the young shooter who had been unfairly banned from Silver Creek. The diner's regulars, mechanics, store clerks, hospital orderlies, would ask her about her progress, offering encouragement and sometimes even small contributions toward ammunition costs. Heard what those Silver Creek folks did to you? Old Joe, a retired factory worker, told her one morning as she refilled his coffee. Bunch of elitist nonsense. You show 'em what real talent looks like. Even some of the younger staff at the range began to question the official story. A janitor slipped Layla a copied set of the Open's official rules, highlighting a clause that could help her case. The lunch lady who worked the range's cafeteria started sharing insider information about practice times and judge schedules. But while support grew among the everyday people of the town, the powers at Silver Creek grew more, determined to keep Layla out. Chase, growing increasingly anxious about his competition, pressured his father to take more drastic measures. She's actually getting better, Dad, Chase complained in his father's study. People are talking about her. What if she finds a way to compete? She won't, Mr. Collins assured his son, but to be safe, I've called in a favor. He showed Chase a photograph of a college-aged shooter with multiple championship titles. Marcus Westfield. Currently taking a gap year before MIT, he'll be entering the Open as a last-minute wildcard entry. A ringer? Chase asked, surprised. Think of him as insurance, Mr. Collins replied smoothly. Just in case any unexpected elements manage to slip through our qualifying process. Meanwhile, Coach Donovan was teaching Layla strategies beyond mere marksmanship. Shooting is 90% mental, he told her during one dawn session. The best technical shooter in the world will lose to someone with ice in their veins and fire in their belly. He subjected her to distractions during practice, playing loud music, shouting discouraging comments, even throwing small objects near her as she aimed. At first, Layla's performance suffered dramatically under these conditions, but gradually, she learned to narrow her focus to create a bubble of concentration that nothing could penetrate. They'll try to get in your head, Donovan warned. They'll whisper things, stand too close, make noises during your shot. You need to be ready. I will be, Layla promised, her determination growing with each practice session. The breakthrough came 3 days before the Open, when a letter arrived at Layla's home. The Silver Creek Range Board of Directors, under threat of a discrimination lawsuit from an anonymous benefactor, had been forced to reinstate Layla's eligibility for a final qualification attempt. It's a trap, Donovan warned when she called him with the news. They'll find another way to disqualify you. Probably, Layla agreed. But it's my only shot. The next morning, Layla returned to Silver Creek for the first time since her humiliating expulsion. The atmosphere was tense as she walked through the lobby, drawing stares and whispers from members. Chase and his friends stood near the trophy case, watching her with undisguised hostility. Mrs. Winters directed her to Lane 1, ironically, the most prestigious lane, where her performance would be visible to everyone in the range. A small group of officials and judges gathered nearby, clipboards in hand, clearly expecting a failure. Layla unpacked Ramirez's rifle with careful, deliberate movements, ignoring the murmurs around her. She noticed Mr. Ramirez in the corner, pretending to clean equipment while watching from beneath lowered brows. Her mother stood at the back of the room, hands clasped tightly in front of her. "Standard qualification course," the head judge explained briskly. 5 shots at 50 yards, 5 at 75, 5 at 100. Minimum score of 85 out of 100 possible points to qualify for the Open. Layla nodded, stepping up to the line. She closed her eyes briefly, centering herself as Donovan had taught her. Then she raised the rifle, sighted her target, and fired her first shot. Bullseye. Her second shot landed right beside the first, then the third. By the time she finished her first round, a perfect cluster of holes marked the center of the target. The room had gone utterly silent. She moved through the 75-yard shots with the same fluid precision, each bullet finding its mark with unerring accuracy. As she prepared for the 100-yard series, she caught sight of Chase's astonished face, his confident smirk replaced by dawning horror. Her final shot broke through the exact center of the target, completing a perfect score of 100, a feat that even the most accomplished shooters rarely achieved in qualification. The silence that followed was deafening. Then the head judge cleared his throat. "Miss Carter has qualified for the Silver Creek Open." A ripple of murmurs spread through the onlookers. Some faces showed shock, others admiration, and a few, particularly among the younger staff members, broke into small, quickly suppressed smiles. As Layla packed up her rifle, she became aware of someone approaching from behind. She turned to find Samira standing there, her expression a complex mixture of guilt and determination. "That was amazing," Samira said quietly. Layla said nothing, simply continuing to pack her equipment. "I'm sorry," Samira continued, her voice dropping even lower. "What I did, there's no excuse. But you should know. My father brought in a ringer, Marcus Westfield. He's a collegiate champion with Olympic qualifiers." Layla paused, absorbing this information. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because it's wrong," Samira replied, meeting her gaze directly. "All of it. The sabotage, the lies, the fixed competition." She swallowed hard. "I can't undo what I did to you, but I can try to make it right." Before Layla could respond, Samira walked away, leaving her to wonder whether this was another trap or a genuine attempt at redemption. As Layla left the range that day, Chase stepped into her path, his earlier shock replaced by cold fury. "Enjoy your little moment," he hissed. "You won't survive the first heat of the actual competition." Layla met his gaze steadily, a small smile playing at her lips. For the first time since she'd entered Silver Creek, she felt no fear or intimidation, only a calm certainty that she belonged exactly where she was. The morning of the Silver Creek Open dawned clear and bright. The range had been transformed, with a large tent erected in the parking lot to accommodate the crowds. Banners proclaimed the event's prestige, and local news crews set up cameras to capture what was typically a showcase for Chase Ellison's talents. Inside, the atmosphere crackled with tension. Competitors from across the region warmed up in the practice lanes, each focused on their own pre-competition rituals. Layla found herself assigned to the first round of heats, paired against Tommy Ellison, Chase's cousin, a skilled shooter in his own right. "Luck of the draw," Mrs. Winters had explained with a poorly concealed smirk when handing out the assignments. Tommy approached Layla as they waited for their heat to begin. "Nothing personal," he said, his tone suggesting the exact opposite. "But the Ellison family has a reputation to maintain." Layla simply nodded, focusing on her breathing and mental preparation as Donovan had taught her. She could feel the stares of the crowd, hear the whispers questioning her presence, but she let it all fade into the background. "First heat, lane 3 and 4, the announcer called. "Tommy Ellison and Layla Carter." A murmur ran through the audience at the mention of Layla's name. Many had heard rumors about the outsider who had forced her way into the competition, but few had expected her to actually appear. The first round course was challenging but straightforward, stationary. Targets at varying distances, with scoring rings that grew smaller as the distance increased. Tommy shot first, hitting the targets with practiced precision. His form was textbook perfect, his groupings tight and consistent. When Layla stepped up to the line, a hush fell over the audience. She took a moment to steady herself, then raised Ramirez's rifle to her shoulder. Her first shot struck the center ring cleanly, drawing a few surprised murmurs. Her second and third followed with equal precision. By the time she completed her round, even the most skeptical observers had fallen, silent. Her score flashed on the electronic board, 98 out of 100, 2 points higher than Tommy's 96. The winner of Heat 1, Layla Carter, the announcer stated, a note of surprise evident in his voice. As Layla stepped away from the line, she caught sight of Mr. Ramirez standing at the edge of the crowd. He gave her the smallest of nods, barely perceptible, but filled with quiet pride. In the competitors' lounge, Layla took a moment to collect herself. Her victory over Tommy had been unexpected by most, and she could feel the shift in the atmosphere, from dismissal to wary respect, but she knew the real challenges were still ahead. The door swung open, and 3 of Chase's friends entered. They surrounded her, making a show of preparing their equipment while exchanging loud comments. "Lucky first round," one said. "Beginner's luck never lasts in the precision stages." "Did you see her form?" another added with a snort. "Completely unorthodox. The judges will dock points for that in the later rounds." "Probably doesn't even know the proper terminology for her own equipment," the third chimed in. "What do you call that thing you're using?" "A gun." Layla ignored them, focusing on checking her ammunition and cleaning her rifle. Inside, she was reciting Donovan's mantra, "Their words are just air, your shots are what count." As the day progressed, Layla continued to advance through the rounds. Each course grew more difficult, moving targets, awkward shooting positions, time constraints. But she adapted with the flexibility she'd developed during her junkyard training sessions. After her quarterfinal victory over a former state champion, Layla noticed someone watching her from the doorway of the preparation area, one of Chase's friends who had been at her lane earlier that day. "What do you want?" she asked warily. The young man glanced nervously over his shoulder before stepping closer. "Look, I'm not supposed to tell you this, but Chase is planning something for the semifinals. He's got one of the course judges in his pocket. They're going to mislabel your scorecard deliberately." Layla studied him skeptically. "Why are you telling me this?" He shrugged uncomfortably. "Because it's not right. I joined this club to shoot, not to cheat." He hesitated, then added, "My grandfather was a lot like you. Talented but from the wrong side of town. Never got his fair shot." "Thank you," Layla said simply, recognizing the courage it had taken for him to approach her. Armed with this information, Layla was vigilant during the semi-finals. When she caught a judge attempting to mark her final shot as an 8 instead of the clear 10 it was, she calmly but firmly requested verification from the head judge. The electronic scoring system confirmed her score, forcing the compromised judge to correct his error. Her opponent in the semi-finals was Marcus Westfield, the ringer Mr. Collins had brought in. Tall and confident, with precision equipment and flawless technique, he represented everything Silver Creek valued. The course was the most challenging yet, moving targets with variable speeds, unpredictable wind conditions, and strict time limits. Marcus shot first, delivering an impressive performance that drew applause from the crowd. His score of 94 seemed nearly unbeatable under the conditions. As Layla prepared for her turn, she noticed Chase and his father watching intently from the viewing area, clearly expecting Marcus to eliminate her from the competition. The pressure was enormous, but she drew on every lesson Donovan had taught her about mental toughness. The first few targets went well, with Layla scoring consistently in the 9 and 10 rings, but midway through the course, a sudden gust of wind caused her to miscalculate, resulting in an 8. The next target moved erratically, forcing another less-than-perfect shot. Going into the final 3 targets, Layla needed perfect scores to tie Marcus. She took a deep breath, visualizing the junkyard where she'd practiced in far worse conditions than these. Something clicked into place. A perfect harmony of focus, technique, and instinct. Her final 3 shots were flawless, earning gasps from even the most experienced shooters in the audience. When her score flashed on the board, 94, tying with Marcus, the crowd erupted in surprised applause. The tiebreaker, based on the accuracy of the final shot, went to Leyla by mere millimeters. As she walked off the range, she noticed Mr. Ramirez standing with unusual prominence at the front of the crowd. Their eyes met, and he gave her a subtle but deliberate thumbs up, a gesture so out of character that it made her smile despite her exhaustion. That smile faded quickly when she looked down at her dominant hand, a small splinter from the rifles. Stock had embedded itself in her palm during the last round, creating a painful wound that was now swelling slightly. She carefully removed the splinter, but the damage was done. A throbbing injury on her trigger hand, just before the final match against Chase Ellison himself. As Leyla bandaged her hand in the preparation room, the reality of what she had accomplished began to sink in. From practicing with sticks in her backyard, to the finals of the Silver Creek Open in just a few short months. But the greatest challenge still lay ahead, a head-to-head matchup against the reigning champion, with a wounded hand and the entire Silver Creek establishment rooting against her. The door swung open, and Chase leaned against the frame, his confident smirk back in place as he noticed her bandaged hand. "Injury problems?" "What a shame," he said with mock sympathy. "Maybe you should withdraw now. Save yourself the embarrassment of losing in front of everyone." Leyla looked up at him calmly. "I'll see you on the range, Chase." His smirk faltered slightly at her confidence. "You got lucky today, but luck runs out. One-shot wonder. Tomorrow, you'll learn where you really belong." The morning of the final match arrived with a tension that hung in the air like static electricity. The Silver Creek Range had never seen such a crowd. Local news reporters, college scouts, curious, townspeople, and the usual members all packed into the viewing area. The story of an unknown girl from the wrong side of town challenging the club champion had spread beyond the shooting community. In the preparation room, Leyla unwrapped the bandage on her hand. The wound looked angry and red, sending sharp pain up her arm when she flexed her fingers. She carefully applied antibiotic ointment and wrapped it again, knowing she would need to adjust her grip to compensate. The door opened, and Chase sauntered in, already dressed in his competition uniform. A custom-made outfit bearing the Silver Creek logo and his family name emblazoned across the back. "Nervous?" he asked, eyeing her bandaged hand with undisguised satisfaction. "There's no shame in forfeiting, you know. Some people just aren't cut out for championship pressure." Leyla continued her preparations without looking up. "I'll take my chances." Chase's smirk faltered slightly at her calm response. "Your little Cinderella story ends today. This is my range, my competition, my trophy." He leaned closer. "You're a one-shot wonder who got lucky. Nothing more." When Leyla finally met his gaze, her expression was steady. "We'll see." As Chase left, Coach Donovan entered, his weathered face betraying concern when he saw her hand. "How bad?" "Bad enough," Leyla admitted. "But I can work around it." Donovan nodded, having expected nothing less. They've designed the final course to favor Chase. Multiple position changes, rapid-fire sequence, complex scoring. Just the kind of technical showcase that rewards years of formal training. And punishes self-taught shooters with unorthodox methods, Leyla concluded. Exactly. Donovan helped her check her equipment one last time. "Remember what I told you about pressure. Everyone out there is expecting you to crack. Use that." The competition area had been transformed for the finals. A complex course with multiple stations had been set up, requiring shooters to move quickly between positions while maintaining accuracy. The crowd fell silent as Leyla and Chase were introduced. Our defending champion, Chase Ellison, seeking his 3rd consecutive title, the announcer proclaimed to enthusiastic applause. And challenger Leyla Carter, in her first competition appearance. The polite applause that followed was notably less enthusiastic, though Leyla noticed a few people, mostly staff and locals who had snuck in, clapping with genuine support. Her mother stood at the back, hands clasped tightly together. "Mr. Ramirez leaned against a wall, his eyes never leaving her face. "Shooters, take your positions. The final will consist of 3 stages: precision shooting, moving targets, and the championship challenge. Highest combined score wins. Chase went first, as defending champion. He moved through the precision stage with textbook perfection. His stance, grip, and trigger control exactly as taught in the most prestigious shooting schools. Each shot landed within the center rings, drawing appreciative murmurs from the judges and spectators. When his final score flashed on the board, 97 out of 100, the crowd applauded enthusiastically. Chase turned to Layla with a confident smile. "Beat that." Layla stepped up to the line, intensely aware of her throbbing hand. As she raised Ramirez's rifle, a jolt of pain shot through her palm, nearly causing her to flinch. She adjusted her grip slightly, distributing the pressure differently. Her first shot was solid but not perfect, an 8 ring instead of a 10. She could hear whispers from the crowd, could practically feel Chase's smirk burning into her back. Closing her eyes briefly, she centered herself. In her mind, she was no longer at Silver Creek. She was back in her backyard, practicing with sticks and stones. She was in the junkyard, balancing on unstable piles of discarded furniture. She was at dawn in the woods with Donovan, learning to shoot through exhaustion and distraction. When she opened her eyes, something had changed. The pain in her hand was still there, but it had become distant, just another factor to accommodate rather than an obstacle to overcome. Her next shot was perfect, as was the one after that. By the time she completed the precision stage, she had scored a 95, not enough to beat Chase, but close enough to stay competitive. The second stage involved moving targets, clay pigeons launched at unpredictable intervals and angles. Chase handled this with practiced efficiency, breaking 18 out of 20 targets. When he finished, he made a show of blowing imaginary smoke from his barrel, drawing laughs from his supporters. Layla stepped up, the pain in her hand now a constant throb. The first target launched, and she tracked it smoothly, squeezing the trigger just as Donovan had taught her. Hit. The second and third followed quickly. Both hits. But on the fourth, a sharp twinge caused her to fire a split second late. Miss. After that mistake, Layla adjusted her timing to account for her slower response. She didn't try to match Chase's textbook form, instead developing a rhythm that worked with her injury rather than against it. By the end of the stage, she had hit 17 targets, 1 less than Chase, putting her 3 points behind overall. As they prepared for the final stage, Layla could sense Chase's growing confidence. The championship challenge was his specialty, a complex sequence involving precision shots through obstacles at varying distances. He had never scored less than 95 on this stage in any competition. A reminder of the standings, the announcer called. Chase Ellison leads with 195 points. Layla Carter follows with 192 points. The championship challenge is worth 100 possible points. Chase took his position, his movements fluid and assured. Each shot was deliberate, his breathing controlled, his focus absolute. When he finished, his score flashed on the board. 96 out of 100. Combined with his previous scores, he now had 291 points, a nearly unbeatable total. As Chase walked off the range, he passed Layla with a triumphant smile. "Don't worry, silver for your first competition is still impressive." Layla took her position, trying to ignore the skeptical murmurs from the crowd. To win, she would need to score at least a 99 on the championship challenge, a near impossible feat even for veteran shooters, let alone a newcomer with an injured hand. As she prepared for her first shot, memories flashed through her mind. Her father's military medal that her mother had shown her. Ramirez's quiet confidence when he gave her his championship rifle. Donovan's gruff encouragement during dawn training sessions. All the people who had believed in her when no one else would. Her first few shots were good but not exceptional. 9s. And 10s that wouldn't be enough to overtake Chase. The pain in her hand made precision increasingly difficult as she progressed through the course. For the final series, the thread-the-needle shot that required sending a bullet through multiple obstacles to hit a distant target, Layla knew she needed something extraordinary. With her conventional grip causing too much pain, she shifted to an unorthodox hold she had developed during her earliest days of practice. The judges exchanged confused glances at her strange technique. It wasn't taught in any manual, wouldn't be approved by any formal coach. But it was hers, born of necessity and creativity when she had no one to teach her the right way. Taking a deep breath, Layla squeezed the trigger. The bullet tracked perfectly through the series of obstacles, striking the final target dead center, a perfect 10. The crowd gasped collectively. Even Chase's smug expression faltered, as Layla's final score appeared on the board, 98 out of 100, giving her a combined total of 290, just 1 point behind Chase. The audience's reaction began to shift. What had started as polite acknowledgement was becoming genuine appreciation. People were standing, applauding not just for the scores, but for the remarkable display of skill and determination they had witnessed. For the championship tiebreaker, both shooters would face the ultimate challenge, a single shot at a target, partially obscured by swinging pendulums, with a time limit of just 10 seconds. Chase went first, his confidence slightly shaken but still intact. As he raised his rifle, his normally perfect stance showed a hint of tension. He hesitated a fraction, too long, rushing his shot as the time limit approached. The bullet struck just outside the center ring, a 9 instead of a 10. When Layla stepped up for her final shot, the range fell completely silent. She could feel everyone watching: Chase and his father, the judges, her mother, Ramirez, the crowd of strangers drawn by the unusual spectacle. But in that moment, they all faded away. It was just her, the rifle, and the target. Ignoring the searing pain in her hand, Layla found her grip, sighted the target through the swinging obstacles, and waited for the perfect moment. 3 seconds remained on the clock when she found her window and squeezed the trigger. The crack of the rifle was followed by an instant of breathless silence. Then the target lit up, showing not just a perfect bullseye but a shot that had broken the electronic sensor in the very center, something that had never happened before in Silver Creek's history. The scoring system flashed. 10+1, range. Record. The stunned silence lasted only a moment before the crowd erupted into wild applause. People who had come expecting to see Chase's coronation were on their feet, cheering for the underdog who had defied all expectations. Chase stood frozen, staring at the scoreboard in disbelief. Then, in a gesture that revealed his true character, he threw his rifle down on the table and stormed off, brushing past officials who tried to direct him to the awards area. As the reality of her victory sank in, Layla felt a strange sense of calm. All the struggle, all the doubt, all the pain. It had led to this moment of perfect validation. Not just a win, but a record-breaking shot that no one could dismiss or explain away. "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcer called as the applause finally quieted, "I present to you the new Silver Creek Open champion, Layla Carter." The head judge approached with the championship medal and trophy. As is tradition, our new champion is invited to say a few words. Layla hesitated, looking out at the sea of faces. Most were still strangers, people who had dismissed or ignored her until this moment. But among them were those who had believed in her, her mother, beaming with pride, Mr. Ramirez, standing straighter than she had ever seen him, Coach Donovan at the back, arms crossed but with the ghost of a smile on his weathered face. And beyond them, she noticed younger kids watching wide-eyed from the edges of the crowd, some of them looking at her the way she had once looked at the photos of champions that lined Silver Creek's walls. Taking a deep breath, Layla stepped to the microphone. "Thank you," she began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I never expected to be standing here today. A few months ago I was practicing with sticks in my backyard because I couldn't afford ammunition. I was told repeatedly that places like this weren't for people like me." She paused, looking around at the club that had tried so hard to exclude her. "But I learned something important along the way. Excellence doesn't care about your zip code or your bank account. It doesn't care what you look like or where you come from. Excellence only asks one question: are you willing to work harder than everyone else?" The crowd had fallen completely silent, hanging on her words. To every kid who's ever been told they don't belong somewhere, whether it's a shooting range or a science lab or an art studio, remember this: barriers are often just other people's, fears disguised as rules. Your job isn't to accept those barriers. Your job is to prove they never should have existed in the first place." As she finished, the applause was deafening. People who had never spoken to her were now cheering, moved by both her performance and her words. Even some of Silver Creek's old guard found themselves nodding in reluctant respect. Near the trophy display, a scout from the national junior team approached with a business card. "That was extraordinary shooting, Miss Carter. We'd like to discuss a sponsorship and training opportunity with our development program." Before Layla could respond, another man in a suit stepped forward. "I represent Western State University. We offer full scholarships to shooters of your caliber for our championship team." The offers continued as people pressed forward, suddenly eager to be associated with the new champion. Layla accepted their cards politely, still processing the dramatic shift in how the world now saw her. Across the room, Mr. Ramirez was surrounded by a small group of older members, former champions, and officials who had once shunned him. Now, they were shaking his hand, clapping him on the shoulder, welcoming him back into the fold. His rehabilitation was complete, his name cleared by the success of his protégé. In a corner, Mr. Collins was engaged in a heated conversation with the club's board members. News of Chase's sabotage attempts and his father's manipulation of the competition had begun to circulate, fueled by Samira's decision to come forward with what she knew. The family's long-standing dominance of Silver Creek was crumbling before their eyes. As the celebration continued, Denise made her way through the crowd to her daughter. Without a word, she wrapped Layla in a tight embrace. "Your father would be so proud," she whispered, tears glistening in her eyes. "I am so proud." When they separated, Denise reached into her purse and pulled out a small box. "I was saving this, waiting for the right moment." Inside lay a tarnished set of dog tags and a faded photograph of a young man in military uniform. Layla's father at about her age, standing with his unit, a rifle slung over his shoulder and a medal pinned to his chest. "He always said talent runs in the blood," Denise said softly. "Looks like he was right." Layla clutched the treasured items, feeling a connection to her father that transcended time and memory. A shared passion, a common gift, a legacy fulfilled. Later, that evening, after the crowds had dispersed and the interviews had ended, Layla returned to Silver Creek to retrieve some equipment she had left behind. The range was quiet, the lights dimmed except for the display cases where her name now appeared on the championship plaque. As she gathered her things, she heard footsteps and turned to find Samira standing awkwardly by the door. "Congratulations," Samira said, genuine admiration in her voice. "What you did today was amazing." Layla nodded, still uncertain where they stood after everything that had happened. "I know I can't just say sorry and make it all better," Samira continued. "But I want you to know that watching you stand up to all of this," she gestured around at the club, "it gave me the courage to stand up to my father. I'm going to art school next year, not law school, not what he planned for me." A small smile crossed Layla's face. "Good for you." Can we ever be friends again?" Samira asked hesitantly. "I don't know," Layla answered honestly, "but I'm willing to see where it goes." It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. The following week, Layla visited Pete's pawn shop where her journey had begun. Pete looked up from behind the counter, recognition and then surprise crossing his face. "Well, well, if it isn't the champion herself," he exclaimed, holding up a local newspaper with Layla's photo on the front page. "You're quite the celebrity now." Layla smiled, noticing that Pete had proudly displayed the newspaper article in his window, right next to the empty space where her rifle had once rested. "Just wanted to thank you," she said, "for taking a chance on me with that rifle." "Best business decision I ever made," Pete chuckled. "Now I tell everyone who comes in. You know that Carter girl? The champion? Got her start right here." 6 months later, at a national youth shooting camp sponsored by her new team, Layla noticed a young girl struggling with her stance. She was small for her age, with worn clothes and a determined expression that Layla recognized all too well. "You're gripping too tight," Layla said, kneeling beside her. "Here, try it like this." The girl looked up with wide eyes, clearly starstruck to be receiving advice from the now famous champion. "I never thought I'd get to meet you," she breathed. "All the kids at my school started talking about shooting because of you. They said, if Layla Carter could do it, anyone can, with enough work." Layla finished, adjusting the girl's elbow slightly. "What's your name?" "Maya," the girl replied shyly. "Well, Maya, let me tell you something someone once told me. Excellence doesn't care where you come from. It only cares where you're going." Layla stepped back, watching as Maya's next shot hit much closer to the center. "And from what I can see, you're going somewhere special." As Maya beamed with new confidence, Layla felt the circle complete itself. What had begun as one girl's impossible dream had become a bridge for others to cross, a door held open for those who would follow. The legacy of Layla Carter, the simple black teen who was ignored at the shooting range until her first shot, broke the champion's record, was just beginning. What happens when we finally break the barriers others built around us? Who else might find courage in our defiance? If Layla's journey moved you, hit the like button and subscribe for more stories that challenge the limits others place on our dreams.